Hello, Blake Rudis here with F64 Academy and F64 Elite, and today I can't wait to share with you some of the things that I've learned from my buddy Jim Welninski about black and white photography and really becoming an artist with this black and white process. So what you see in front of you is an image that would have been converted to black and white, and I could have called it done, maybe, but the things that Jim has taught me have taken these images to the next level. I'm going to teach you 3 techniques for highly effective and dramatic black and white images that I learned from Jim that you need to check out. So here is the gradient map, our regular black and white, and then we start to add some of these other elements that Jim has taught me where we make these really dramatic and compelling black and white images rather quickly and rather easily, but all with our artistic nature in mind. Awesome stuff. Today I'm going to teach you 3 techniques for highly effective dramatic black and white photographs. Now, I didn't learn this all on my own. Okay, I learned some of this stuff from my buddy Jim Welninski, who is a phenomenal black and white artist. I've learned so much from him over the last several years of knowing him. He's taught me how to take much better architecture photographs, and he's even taught me how to add this element of drama and artistry to my black and white images and allow me to actually just kind of let go a little bit. I'm very technically oriented, you know, I like steps, but Jim is very fluid, and I love it. I love it. So I just took his course recently. It's called Black and White Artistry. And I learned a ton of stuff. So I'm going to share with you 3 techniques that I've learned from that course. The first one is something that Jim and I both share in common. We both love this method. The second one is a method that I kind of do with dodging and burning, but you're going to see it's much more effective with this way that Jim has taught me. And the third is one that Jim just completely blew my mind with the first time I saw him use it. I mean, it's life-changing for your black and white images. So the first technique, the absolute first one, is getting a good black and white image to begin with. Jim and I both share the same idea that the gradient map is the best black and white conversion method on the planet. And why? It's because it maps out your colors to the appropriate tones that they should be in black and white. So take a look at this. So here is our zone chart with colors. Here is our regular saturation, our hue saturation. You take the colors and you just drop the saturation down. Believe it or not, this is a way that people will produce black and white images. Notice that at the top, this is black and this is white because there really is no saturation in black. But if you look at the other colors, those colors of blue and red and green and their highest form of saturation become unsaturated or desaturated. The difference between this method and something like the gradient map is if we turn this gradient map on here, which is just as simple as going down here to our gradient map and choosing the colors black and white from our gradient editor. Look at the difference. Huge difference. What it's doing is it's saying, okay, blue, which is this color right here, is a very dark color in its tonal value or tonal nature. And green and yellow are very light colors. So if we look at that, we can see just how much lighter these colors are in comparison to the rest of them. Yellow is our lightest color. It's almost close to white. So the gradient map will map out those colors to the appropriate tones that they should be in a black and white photograph. Now, if we take that principle and we move it over to our image here, I've already done some of my work with the Zone System Express. Just to show you here, I did the condensed tones, I did the enhanced contrast to really bring out a lot of the details here, and then I did this Radiance 2.0. 3 of my really favorite things. I'm going to go ahead and drop that folder down and show you that if we go up here and we do a desaturation, that hue saturation, and drop it all the way down, that's what we get. That's our result. But if we start this with something like the gradient map set to black and white, it's going to set whatever colors are over here in your palette. We set that to black and white, we get a much better black and white conversion. So I'll turn that hue sat layer off and you can see the difference now. This is the hue sat layer. Not very good. Everything's just kind of washed out. And here we actually start to get black blacks and white whites. Really important when we're talking about black and white images. So that's the first technique, getting that black and white image just right before you go into the processing. That's something that Jim and I both share. We both believe is one of the best techniques for black and white photography. The second thing is something that Jim has taught me to just be a little bit more fluid and a little bit more free with. And it's kind of like dodging and burning in a sense, but it's a lot more powerful in that you can make a lot of manipulations to these when you do them on curves. So what we need to do is we need to add some drama to this photograph. And this is going to be the first part of adding drama to the photo. So we're going to make a curves adjustment layer. And we're going to call this curves adjustment layer lighten. Okay? And with this curves adjustment layer, we're just going to bring our curve, or tone curve, up and lighten everything up. Really lighten it up. We might want to come down here and protect our dark areas though. So take this and drop this down to about here to protect some of those darks from this lightening. Now you're going to say, Blake, that's really bright. I know, it's okay. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to click on this mask and we're going to press Command or Control I to invert it. Now, let's make another curves adjustment layer. And with this curves adjustment layer, we're going to darken everything down. So let's call this darken. And with this curve, I'm going to take the top of this curve and just start dragging it down so my darks, so the whole image basically gets darker, but it keeps my tonal values looking really good, okay? So we just want everything to be darker. So just about right there, maybe right there, just below this area here. So now we need to go down to this mask, click on the mask, and press Command or Control I to invert that. This is where things get fun. This is where things get really interesting. This is where we get to paint that light back in or paint those darks back in. You might be thinking, Blake, this is like a curves layer dodge and burn. And it's kind of like a curves layer dodge and burn, but what we're specifically doing is trying to add drama to this and not necessarily subtle changes with light. I tend to look at dodging and burning as subtle changes. This is more of an artistic flair. So I'm going to take my Wacom tablet with my pen, and I'm going to make a smaller brush, much smaller than this. And I'm going to start with my darks. I tend to like to start with my darks first to darken things down. And I'm just going to kind of go in here and brush with white. So I'm going to set my brush here, set this to white, and then I'm going to make sure that my opacity is at 100%. This is a very soft edged brush, so it will transition nicely in my image. So I'm just going to go ahead and add some contrast between these areas. I had a professor in college that told me that if you really want to add drama when you're drawing, where lines meet, you want to add a lot of darker area with your pencils. So like this area, you can just start, going in here and really outlining where these lines meet. We can outline where this area of lines meet. And these are kind of things that I think about just by, accenting those details a little bit. And then maybe, in here, and I'm just painting really lightly. And because I'm using a Wacom tablet, if we press Alt or Option and look at that mask, it is pressure sensitive. So if I push really hard, it's going to make a hard adjustment. If I push really light, it's going to make a light adjustment. So I'm also going to use this to darken this area down back here. And this is, where Jim kind of talks about just, letting yourself go. He talks about this thing called the muse, where you have this muse inside of you that you need to bring out. And art can bring that muse out a little bit. My problem is that I get so rigid. I'm so strict sometimes with what I do with my images that I have a hard time letting myself go. And what I love about Jim's teaching is that he's, taught me, which I teach people to be artists all the time. But Jim has reminded me several times, Blake, you need to be more of that artist that you want to be. And I love Jim for that. So let me go ahead and darken the bird down here, and I'll darken this detail here and darken this. And I'm just kind of going around and seeing things that I like darkened up. If I darken something up and I don't like it, I can always press Command or Control Z and undo it, okay? So that looks pretty good there. If I press Alt or Option and click on that mask, you can see what I've done. I've darkened down a lot of the darker detail areas here, and I could probably even make this stone a little bit darker right here because I like the drama that adds by being really dark right there, okay? And that looks good. The next one is the lighten. So I'm going to start lightening things up. I really liked how this looked right here, this female on this elevator. It's ironic that I'm working on images from Chicago because Jim is from Chicago, and we did a workshop together in Chicago, and this is from our workshop. So I'm going to brighten that up a little bit. I'm going to brighten some of these details up a little bit here, and that looks good. Okay, I'm going to brighten up this light right here a lot. I'm going to brighten up the reflection, brighten up these reflections. See how it's adding drama? And this is a lot, I think this is a little bit quicker than how dodging and burning works. And the really cool thing about this, and I'll show you this in a second, is that if you want more drama out of it, you can just adjust the curve at any time, which is a lot different than dodging and burning. If you're just going to dodge and burn with your traditional dodge and burn layer, you're kind of stuck with whatever you had there. But here we get to really brighten this stuff up. And I'll go ahead and go right in here, okay? And I'm not stuck with this. Okay, I'm not stuck with this at all. If I like what I'm doing here and I want it even brighter, I can always go back into that lighten curve, click on that curve, and if I want to make it brighter or darker, I can. Look at that. It's like turning the lights on. Look at that. Boom, that is awesome, okay? So let's look at this before and after. This is our black and white. It's a good black and white conversion. Here we've made things a little bit brighter, and here we've made things a little bit darker. And that looks really good. Now, also consider blend if here. We've talked about blend if many times on this channel. If I double click on these darkens, maybe I want to darken things down, but at the same time I want to protect some of those lights a little bit. We can go here and just drop our lights down so that that darker area protects those light areas a little bit, and then press Alt or Option and feather it, okay? Just feather it all the way to the very edge, just like that. It's a nice transition. So if some of the darkening hit our highlights, and we don't want it to create like a tone compression, we can just feather it out a little bit just in those light areas. Likewise, if our lightning hit too much of a dark area, we can double click in here, and we can protect the underlying layers dark areas, which would probably be somewhere around here, by moving this over. You see that? See right in here? Move that over till we get a nice good protection, and then press Alt or Option and feather it. Now, you are still trying to lighten some of your darks and darken some of your lights. That's the whole process of painting with light, right? But we can get a nice feather in there so it has a nice smooth transition. Now, the third technique I need to discuss with you is something that blew my mind the first time Jim showed it. I remember we were both doing a workshop together last year, and he was doing his workflow, his artistic workflow. And he did this trick where he put a whole black layer over his image. And I even scratched my head. I'm sitting in the back of the room. As an educator, I'm like, oh my gosh, what is Jim going to do with this? You know, thinking to myself, there's no way he's going to be able to recover anything from this. And then he started punching holes in this black and turning the lights on in the room. And it was just magnificent. Talk about drama. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a new layer, press Shift F5, and I'm going to fill this with black, all the way black. Just fill it in. Now the opacity here, I'm going to drop this opacity to about 75% so I can barely see through it. And I'm going to leave it like this, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a mask on here. And with this mask, I'm going to paint with white on areas that I want to come out, to be revived in the image. Now we've got lights here, so the lights make it really easy. So I'm just going to make my brush a little bit bigger. I'm going to start brushing in with black now because I want to protect my image from that black layer. So I need to paint on that mask with black. Before we were painting with white to recover things that we had done. Now we need to paint with black to get rid of the things that we've just done. So I'm going to start painting in here. Look at that. Look at how things just start to come alive. And you know, your pressure with your Wacom tablet is going to dictate how much comes out here. So I'm going to bring this out to about here like that, and then brighten this up a little bit more here. Maybe brighten some of this area up here. I like that, looking good. Brighten up some of this area here. Maybe make my brush a little bit bigger so that feather spreads out really nicely. I'm pressing the right bracket key to increase that brush size. So I get a nice feather and a transition here. And that's okay if it's dark down there. The whole idea here is to add drama and to make this image just kind of resonate a little bit more than it would if it didn't have this deep, dark pit of drama here. So I'll just go and paint that. Make this a little bit smaller. Again, paint some of these details here on this part of this elevator. Bring some of that back, and then bring back these lights, and then up here onto the ceiling, bring some of those lights back, maybe a little bit bigger of a brush and paint a little bit lighter. Come down here to this light right here and just paint this in. See, I'm just painting things back in that I want to brighten back up in the image. Brighten that up. Again, paint this area here where these lights are coming on, and paint that, paint that, paint that, and paint that back in the back. And look at that. I mean, the amount of drama that's been added to this image now through this, what he calls punching the holes in the black layer, or, you know, turning those lights on. I mean, look at that. You know, the more you paint it in, the nicer it looks. I'm going to big brush right here and just kind of hit this area up here because it doesn't look very natural. And then just very little bit. So if we look now at the image, I'm going to paint a little bit more over this side. Okay. Recover some of that area. I'm just very delicately painting, and this is so different than how I normally work, because I like to make sure that you know, I do things automatedly. Like, okay, if I'm going to darken my darks, I'm going to make a curve and I'm going to go into blend if and I'm going to just knock out the lights. Well, that's not as fluid and artistic moving as using your brush. I used to be a painter. Why do I not do this that much is just killing me. So, you know, Jim kind of inspired me to bring some more of that painting world back into my life. So that looks good. I like that. I really like that. Let's take a look at this all before and after here. So let's take all this stuff off. Technique number 1 was just taking that gradient map and getting a good black and white conversion, okay? So now I lightened up my lighter areas and brightened up those lights to make them really bright, nice, and punchy. And then I added some area to darken everything down. Now you would be inclined to maybe stop here, but the real drama and the mood and the feeling and the emotion that comes out in the image comes with something like this really dark black. It's kind of like a vignette, a whole custom vignette. And you're not stuck with it. You know, you're thinking, well, Blake, that's really dark in some of these areas and it doesn't really look that great. Well, that's fine. You can either drop the opacity a little bit so that more of your image shines through, but we still get that nice dramatic flare, or you can keep it up really high and double click in here and look at how you can use blend if to protect your image in some areas from this deep black pit that we've kind of created, this, you know, black piece of construction paper with holes in it now. Maybe protect some of those light areas so those brights can come back on. And that helps bring out some of those lighter areas through that black piece of felt or construction paper. Still has the same effect, but look at the before and after we've come in with blend if. We've really brought that stuff back. The key thing here is to make really good dramatic black and good dramatic white to bring out that emotion and the feeling in the image so that when someone looks at it, they feel something. Jim's course is awesome. I highly implore you to check it out. If you're here on YouTube, you can click the description below to get to his site to check it out. Or if you're on my page, f64academy.com, click the button above, which will also take you to that page. So here, check this out. Here's another image that I worked on with these same techniques. So we have that black and white drama. I kind of put it all into a folder this time so I could see the difference between them. But here is that mask with the holes punched in it. Look at that. I even kind of created a pattern. This was so much fun. Like you have no idea. I feel like I've been like resurrected with my artistic flair here. Thank you, Jim. Here's the lightening of those areas. Here's the darkening of those areas. And if they're too much, you know, you can always just drop them a little bit, or you can go into the curve and manipulate the curve a little bit more to see where you'd want darker or lighter areas. If things are a little too dark, just taper it off a little bit. That's the beauty of having these on a separate layer like that. It's really awesome. Here's another one. And I took my son to the Nelson Atkins Museum here in Kansas City. I just loved the interaction between him and this Buddhist-inspired room. And, you know, here's the original. Here's with that gradient map. It's not that great, but we start to add that drama, and look what happens to this photo. It takes on a whole nother look. And this, you know, this is a photo that I've been wanting to process for a while, but I just couldn't quite figure out what I wanted to do with it. But this black and white adds some awesome drama to this. If you like this, 17-minute video here, Jim's got like 4.5 hours of content on how he creates very dramatic black and white images, and he is a pure artist at it. So go ahead and check that out. Again, my name is Blake Rudis with F64 Academy and F64 Elite, and if you like this, please comment on it, share it, and tell a friend, because you can make some very compelling black and white images very easily, very quickly, with some of these artistic things in mind that Jim Welninski has taught me. Awesome stuff. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this.